Sick.
All right. All right, another Saturday is upon us, which means we got a lot to talk about. Little live before lock, college football. We are here at Stochastic. I'm Ben. Rasa and Matt Gajewski is with me. 12-game slate, so we get a little more room to navigate. Not as many selections, but we also don't have as many games that we're just going to say, don't worry about it. So we've got a lot to break down. I'm excited. We saw a 4-pack of games last night. Saw a couple games the night before. We're in the thick of it now, sir. Conference play is upon us.
Yeah, man. Pumped. I was talking to you before the show.
You were?
At the beginning. Yeah, I was. At the beginning of the week, didn't look like the most exciting games. Not like last week where we just had ranked matchup after ranked matchup. But the more you dive into this card, the more you like it. If you're willing to get a little deeper than the slate, I mean, from a betting perspective, we've got really good matchups in the Sun Belt, the MAC. And I actually kind of did a 180 on this DFS slate. I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that because it's true. I mean, we got spoiled last week with Notre Dame and Ohio State, Clemson and Florida. It's just big-time matchups up and down the card. There's still some, but probably not to that caliber, and you just can't have that every week. I did want to ask you, though. I always like to get your first thoughts of the slate from pricing, construction. Is it a double quarterback, super flex type slate? Is it easy? Is there pay down options? What were your thoughts when you saw the slate?
I think it's mostly 2 QBs today. The big decision point was Caleb Williams. He's priced super high, but the slate is loose enough to get him pretty easily for cash. We'll talk about that game a lot. We should really focus on it for DFS, and it's early, so it'll be early in the video. But yeah, no issues getting Caleb, mostly playing 2 QBs. There's probably 4 or 5 really strong running back plays, so I don't hate the 4 running back builds, but I do think you are giving up a little ceiling.
Let's get into it. I see our chat ready to rock. All our friends are in there. You guys want to support us? Easiest way, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, be part of the team. You guys know it. You want to be part of us, and we would love to have you. Over 90,000 on this channel. Race to 100K between us and Odd Chopper. Let's get into it. Clemson and Syracuse. Clemson is a road favorite here, kind of a season that has gone down the drain, but we'll see what they have left. Klubnik, Schrader, a lot of other skill position players. What do you see in this game to get us started?
Right away, I think Clemson's a great GPP team. Touchdown favorites over Syracuse. I think that should be wider. Syracuse has played 4 cupcakes. I have a lot of questions with their roster that haven't appeared yet because of the opponents they've played. The total's 53 and a half in some spots. I think it's a sneaky over spot there too, which has me intrigued for DFS. Both these teams are top 35 in pace. So Syracuse defense doesn't scare you. Clemson's implied team total is 30 with some room for a ceiling potentially. And then Syracuse plays fast enough where even though the matchup's tough, they can probably do their part to get this game where you need it for tournaments. Shipley is going to be the most owned player in the whole game for good reason. He's at 5,900. If you just isolate their competitive games, get rid of the cupcakes, so we're talking Florida State and Duke, Shipley's averaging 24 and a half touches per game. He's in about a 70-30 split in those game environments over Maffa. And this is a 7-point spread. If we just go based on what bookmakers are telling us, Shipley should be closer to that 24 and a half touch mark than the 12 to 15 touches he saw in the blowouts. Makes him one of the most affordable backs on the slate with the highest projection. Only real reason to get away from him is leverage, and we have a couple of these backs. So right away, he's somebody that you should be focusing your attention on. That means Klubnik and the receivers probably come in a little under-owned. If you need leverage, the pass game is going to be there. Clemson still has a 51% pass rate, even though they've played 2 cupcakes. Klubnik hasn't been great. His efficiency is a little poor, but they do run him a fair amount. He has 23 designed attempts this year, so that's something that they will use. And the receiving core is a little narrower than normal with Antonio Williams out. Last week, without him, they just used Bo Collins, Tyler Brown, and Adam Randall almost every snap. No issues playing any of those guys. I think Collins is going to be the most owned, and I don't think he's going to be particularly owned. But if you need to save some salary, Tyler Brown, Adam Randall, they're going to play almost every single snap, as is Jake Brenningstool at tight end. The only player in Syracuse I think that's going to come in with some pretty good ownership is LaQuint Allen, which scares me because he's played in nothing but positive game scripts so far. He's now by far facing the toughest defense he's played to date. 17.8 touches is great, good role in the pass game, but he could get iced on things like touchdowns. And when we have 4 or 5 backs that I think we could play in this price range, he would be my least favorite. Schrader and the receivers come in as just contrarian options here. And that's another worry with LaQuint Allen that you don't have with some of these other running backs is Schrader vultures a lot of touchdowns at the goal line. He's very mobile. So I think LaQuint Allen's a little risky among, I'll say there's like a tier of 5 backs at the top in this like 5.5K to 6.5K range.
So in this game, just to kind of sum it up, you just ran through both sides of it. It seems like it's Shipley and then everyone else is more in the GPP contrarian bucket. Correct?
Yep. And I have a lot more interest with the Clemson side, the pass catchers and the signal caller for tournament leverage specifically.
Do you have any Klubnik with 2 of them? Like Brown and Collins say?
I did not purposely limit that, but I don't think so. I'm running through them right now. I'm seeing single stacks for the most part. I haven't come across a 2 yet.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to the big time game. Early in the show, USC and Colorado. Colorado had some issues last week, wasn't able to get it going. 72.5 point total here. USC's been fluctuating basically around 3 touchdowns. Caleb Williams is having an incredible year. We really haven't seen him much because they've been kind of fooling around with Nevada and these type of teams. I'm not sure they'll be tested here, but it's in Boulder. It'll be an emotional game. You mentioned you can probably pay that price tag in cash for Caleb Williams. When you click his name, how do you structure around him to make it work?
For cash, play him naked. I don't think you need to mess with the receivers. Even last week against Arizona State, when the game was more competitive than it should have been, these receivers rotated. 6 of them, they all play about 50% of the routes. I'll dive into them in a second, but rather than gamble on which one you think catches a touchdown or 2, just by playing Caleb naked, you absorb all of that. And he runs a little bit. He had 7 designed attempts in that game. The 2 prior games, he only had 2 combined. Just that's level of competition, has nothing to do with Caleb. He'll run when he needs to. You think you just play him naked, no issues getting to him. The question is for tournaments, what do you do? Because Mario Williams, Zachariah Branch, Brendan Rice, Taj Washington, Dorian Singer, and Kyron Hudson all play about 50% of the routes. And there was no deviation from that last week. I think if you just rank these guys based on talent, I would try to get Dorian Singer first, 2nd, Mario Williams, 3rd, Taj Washington, 4th, Zachariah Branch, 5th, Brendan Rice, 6th, Kyron Hudson. That's how I'm approaching it. I'm sprinkling them all for tournaments, not taking a stand with any of them. And that's tournament specific. Cash, I would run them naked. The ultimate leverage play might just be Marshawn Lloyd, the running back. Outcarried Austin Jones 13-3 last week in the competitive game. And I think that probably persists. The only thing I'm worried about with Lloyd is you have 5 running backs, 5.5K to 6.5K. With that said, playing him does change the build a little bit. So I think you will run into a unique construction by playing him. That's how I'm approaching USC. Hope that makes sense. For cash and small field stuff, it's just Caleb naked. Tournaments, it's sprinkling those 6 receivers. And then I think I'll be a little overweighted on Lloyd. We'll see where his ownership comes in, but I don't think it's going to be above 15%.
On the other side, again, they're looking for a big bounce back. No one could get anything going. Travis Hunter is still hurt. You've got Weaver and Horn and obviously Sanders. What do you look to for Colorado? Is it run back options, or are you okay stacking them and running it back with maybe a USC pass catcher?
Yeah, I'm not going to play Sanders. He's just way too expensive for his role. He's going to 300-yard bonus a lot. They're 11th in pace, 62.5% pass rate. Sanders is super efficient, but he also holds the ball forever. The offensive line is horrible, and he's taken 23 sacks already. He has negative 93 cumulative yards on the year. Even with a 300-yard bonus, he's going to lose 4 or 5 points every single game. That offensive line's not getting better, and I don't think the offense is going to change. They are insistent on pushing the ball downfield. So Sanders at 95 is just unplayable, in my opinion, and people will click him because he's popular. Easy fade. The receivers, this is far more interesting. You don't have Hunter, but Weaver's expected to play. You'll see him and Jimmy Horn at the top. There's no real separation in their roles. Weaver has more targets, but every single route for both of these guys, they run 4 wide a ton. So where I actually have a lot of interest, especially with USC stacks and looking at Colorado run backs, is Javon Antonio and Tarvarish Dawson. Antonio missed, he got hurt immediately in week 1, but he came back last week. Immediately 70% of the routes, only saw 4 targets, but he's 4,600. We know how often Colorado's going to throw. He immediately outsnapped and outpaced Tarvaris Dawson in terms of routes. So I have a lot of interest in Antonio at the cheap price. They've also been using more Michael Harrison, their tight end, since the injury to Travis Hunter occurred. I think you can mix and match all 3 of those guys for leverage as well as salary savings. And my favorite would be Antonio.
Last question for me, because we know it's such a good game and there's so many playable guys. Do you have lineups that have nothing in this game completely, just complete game fade?
Yeah, I am running 150 though.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's a contrarian option, but anytime you have a game, I mean, the total is just looking at this, it's almost a couple touchdowns north of every other game. In most games, it's like 4 touchdowns. So I get it, but there's still a range of outcomes where it comes in way under the total. That's probably very unlikely, of course, but I just was interested in that. So any feel on, I mean, I assume you think that USC handles them, right?
Yeah, I kind of want to bet it honestly now because in addition to Travis Hunter being out, Slusher being out, Shiloh Sanders is out too. I don't even know who they're playing at DB. And it doesn't seem like they're going to play Cormani McClain. I'm sure you saw the videos. We kind of had Sanders just dice up Cormani in the media for not studying film and practicing hard. But anyway, this is the showdown. So I guess a couple other things to include just real quick. In showdown, you'll probably play some of the Colorado backs. Dylan Edwards is the pass catcher. He plays on third downs. He plays in situations where they do pass. But if this game stays closer than you think, Alton McCaskill should be the beneficiary of their ground attack. The Houston transfer made his debut last week, just game scripted out. And then people are going to play Lake McCree. I would not recommend it. He's one of the USC tight ends. He plays tight end for a team that runs 4 wide every play. He pops because USC has a 47.5 implied team total, and he runs some routes at 3,500. I X'd him out.
Anything else on this game?
I think if you have a question, feel free to ask, but I hope that was pretty all-encompassing. I tried to rank my preference for the USC receivers, which was the hardest thing I had to do this morning.
Yeah, no, not easy. And of course, again, I'll tell you later in the show everything we've got going on, but you can always get this data, ownership projections. Link is in the description for our package. I'll definitely talk about that in a bit as well. Let's talk about Owner's Box, but I want to talk about Texas A&M and Arkansas right now. It's a 6-point spread, and really the news this week was not only is Texas A&M's quarterback out, but he is out for good. Broke a bone in his foot, so they have to move on now. My first question is really, how do they move on? Does it change the offense? And then in this game, both on the other side with Jefferson and for Texas A&M, who do we want to target?
I don't think it'll change the offense. Maybe they go to a slightly run heavier approach. They do have a 56% pass rate, but Johnson played in an offense similar to this at LSU, where LSU was pretty bad. They were just throwing the ball nonstop. Their pass rate was like 63% that year. The only real difference between Wegman and Johnson, I think, is Johnson's way more erratic with his turnovers, which those of you that watch NFL know Jameis Winston. A lot of times that's not necessarily bad for DFS. A lot worse for real life football. But Max Johnson, he's reckless, but he's going to push the ball downfield. I don't think this is a huge downgrade for Stewart, Smith, and Noah Thomas, who's expected to return today. They should still be targeted heavily. Max Johnson is fearless, so I think you can play those guys. I got a little bit of Johnson in stacks just because this game is a little sneaky. Arkansas's defense has been up and down. They're allowing nearly 10 yards per pass attempt. So Johnson does project decently. I don't think you need to X him, but I certainly would be stacking him, and I'd be looking at Stewart and Aeneas Smith in particular. The backfield, they sort of moved away from their even 3-way committee, gave Le'Veon Moss 16 carries. Second was Ruben Owens at 7. So I'm really interested to see if this continues. Ultimately, Le'Veon Moss at 5,400. On a different slate, I'd probably have a lot of interest, but with Shipley and Genty and all these guys in this range, I don't think it's necessary.
On the other side, what are you doing with Raheem Sanders, who looks like, from what I've seen, he's going to be good to go? Do you think immediately he gets a workload that renders him playable, or is this more of a wait and see?
I've been thinking about this a lot this morning. My guess is yes. Otherwise, I don't know why you hold. So they held him out of LSU, which is a bigger game than this. It seems like they're just holding him out till he's fully healthy. And he did practice last week ahead of LSU and didn't end up being active. He's the best player in this offense. I would anticipate him getting close to his full workload. Maybe it's not like the 25 carries he was seeing last year, but probably something in the 15 to 20 range. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate for leverage. Everyone's going to be playing Genty, Brooks, Shipley. I don't think a lot of people are going to have Raheem Sanders in their lineup. He doesn't project well because his role is really hard to project. But if you were to give him his role from last year, he'd be the best running back in this price range. So I love Sanders. If he burns me, it's going to be in about a quarter of my lineups. It is what it is, but I'm willing to take the gamble.
Last question from the game. Jefferson and these receivers, where do they rank? Does Sanders impact them? KJ Jefferson has been more than willing to take the ball and run. Do you think that continues?
Surprisingly, he hasn't run as much this year as last year even. He did see 9 designed attempts twice, but then just 9 combined in the other 2 games. I think this probably remains pretty consistent for KJ Jefferson. They've been running the hell out of AJ Green and Rashad Dubinion. So I think he's still fine. And from a passing perspective, he's been excellent this year. His efficiency is through the roof. He's over 70% completion, over 9 yards per attempt. And this is a shock to me because he's playing with like FCS receivers, Andrew Armstrong and Isaac Tesla. I think you can play them both. Tesla and Andrew Armstrong essentially have the same route rates, but there's a big difference in price, a slight difference in targets. I think Tesla's fine. Tight end Luke Haas is playing a ton as well, which surprised me. The one guy I'll highlight as a potential value for those of you that want to pivot off Lake McCree, which is what I would recommend if he's in your lineup. Tyrone Broden, over 60% of the routes last week. He kind of iced Jaden Wilson for that wide receiver 3 spot, sell 7 targets. He's probably my preferred guy under 3.5K.
Well, final thing here. Chat was mentioning Noah Thomas expected back for A&M. Does he factor in?
Absolutely. And Ja'Day Walker got hurt in their last game. His status hasn't been updated. Didn't look great, but even when he's healthy, I don't think he's going to ice Noah Thomas by any means. In like week 1, Thomas played way ahead of him and played well. I think Thomas gets his job back. Generally, coaching staffs come in with the moniker, you don't lose your starting job to injury.
Fair enough. Yeah, I like Arkansas in this game for what it's worth. I believe you're with me. Are you not?
Yeah, I bet Arkansas. I love Arkansas. I think it's my favorite bet of the week.
There we go. Again, odd shopper, you know that. I also want to mention we got plenty of games to go. We also got plenty of time. If you have not heard of Owner's Box, you obviously haven't been watching our shows. But if you've not yet signed up, there is still, of course, plenty of time. The NFL season is rolling on over there. And again, if you're watching college football, you know how, first of all, fun and potentially profitable Superflex can be. And Owner's Box has brought that to the NFL with their format. You can get over there and immediately you deposit. Link is below. 500 bonus match on your first deposit up to $500. So if you want to go for it, go for it. You want to do less, you can absolutely do that as well. You're also getting a free week of our NFL Sims Max package. So I'm sure you've heard a lot about this. Maybe you say, you know what, I'm not ready to commit. This is the best way to try it out. You get to try it out, full functionality for a full week, in addition to getting all the perks of playing over on Owner's Box, from the overlay to the first deposit bonus and all of those things. Again, a great time to do it. The link is below. Not saying move your whole bankroll over there. Of course, you could do that, but add it to the portfolio. Definitely think that is a space and a place to build up that bankroll. Look at all those states. You can play in most of them. Again, check out that link. No reason not to. And get your free week of NFL Sims Max. When you sign up, we will get in contact with you. We'll take care of it, and you will be good to go. Now, a lot of games on the schedule again. An interesting one. It's another SEC East battle. Florida and Kentucky. You know, Florida's a team, I guess I'm not going to play a transit property game. Obviously, Utah, maybe not a juggernaut that we thought, but they were on the road last night. But Florida's got some interesting things. Your boy Mertz is there. Is this a good spot for them? 44-point total, but a very competitive spread. Could go either way.
Yeah, the total has me pretty weary of the entire game, especially Mertz. He's going to need a 300-yard bonus. I think even at his price tag, because we have Altmaier, we have Card, we have Taylor Green all in this range. So he's not necessary, and he takes a lot of sacks, -24, cumulative rushing yards on the year. Receivers a complete mess. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, and I think they're going to get some guys back today. You've got like Marcus Burke, who's going to return sometime soon. Eugene Wilson's projected back. He was on the depth chart at least. We'll see if he actually suits up. So it's kind of like Ricky Pearsall at receiver, who's overpriced after, beating up on Charlotte and having that insane catch. I'd rather pay down than pay for him. And then the backfield's a two-way committee. It's Trevor Etienne. It's Montrell Johnson. They run strict hot hand, which is insane. Like 3 weeks ago, Johnson led. 2 weeks ago, Etienne led. Last week, Johnson led again. I have no feel on this. I think it literally is just how these guys do in-game. Kentucky, I want to play more, but man, they're 118th in pace. Florida's 100th, so that's why the total is so low. The pass rate for Kentucky's fine, so I don't hate one-offs here. Ray Davis has an awesome role, 15 touches per game. That'd be way higher if they didn't play teams like Ball State. And then the receivers, Berrien Brown, Dane Key, and Tavion Robinson, they're locked into 3 wide sets. I would prefer Berrien Brown and Dane Key just for their target shares, but these are just one-offs.
One quick thing, Branch is out for USC. He's not dressed. So that thins out the wide receiver pool a little more, still roulette, but one less guy to choose from.
Yep, I actually like Branch too. I think rather than playing a guy like Michael Jackson, I think USC will just condense around the 5, if that makes sense, rather than like bring up another guy.
Yeah, that does make sense.
That's my take on it.
On the other side, Kentucky. I know you touched upon some of this stuff, but just round this game out for us. Again, a very competitive spread. Implied total is almost equal, of course, because it's a pseudo pick'em.
Yeah, I think this is just a one-off spot. More interest on the Kentucky side. Those 3 receivers and Ray Davis.
Anything else in this game? Any bets? I have no interest in this game. Again, for DFS, didn't really stand out either. Kind of just a game on the slate.
Yep, I agree 100%. I would rather go elsewhere.
I'm sure that elsewhere is Northwestern. Penn State and Northwestern. Little 26.5 point spread, 47 point total. So you kind of know what you're getting into here. Penn State is for real. They will have real tests against Michigan and Ohio State. Iowa last week proved no match. That was also at night in Happy Valley. That's never an easy situation. Going to Northwestern is definitely a sleepwalk spot. The talent cap is so big, though. What do we see from Allen and Singleton and the pass catchers? Do we want to get involved here at all?
I think those guys are awesome GPP plays solely because they will run up scores on teams. 21 carries for Allen last week, 17 for Singleton. It's like Corum and Edwards at times. It's like the Ohio State backs at times. When you have a 37 implied team total, you probably want pieces of it, especially for leverage. But there's a lot of really good running back plays in the 5 to 6K range. I think these are just sprinkle options. A little better on FanDuel. Penn State in general is a little cheaper over there. They're on the morning slate, not the main slate. Anyway, maybe you could play Drew Aller. I just don't love the volume for him. The efficiency hasn't been good. He doesn't run a ton. Penn State, I think, is really hard to get to. Keandre Lambert-Smith, the only receiver they're using fully right now. They had some injuries. Last week, they had a ton of 12 personnel sets. It was basically Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson on 75% of the snaps apiece. It's even with the high total, it's really hard to get to them. I would rather just take one-offs with the backs.
Yeah, it is a tricky situation. I mean, again, you're like, what's the formula? Are you hoping that Northwestern pushes them? I mean, it just the range of where this game really exceeds the total by a lot. You're going to have to run hot with the touchdowns, the limited touchdowns that could be in this game. Is there really anything else for Penn State to mention?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Again, they get a couple pseudo bye weeks before they get some big tests. Once again, on the other side, there's always one. And I have a strong feeling it might be this team. What is there for Northwestern that could even be remotely playable? Is it Kurtz? Is it anything for this team against Penn State's defense?
I don't have a single share in Northwestern.
Well, that makes it tougher. Yeah, they're bad. Who is this wide receiver? 215 yards against Minnesota?
Bryce Kurtz?
Yeah. What's his deal?
He's good. He's just 5,300. He's 600 more than Jatavian Sanders. So the volume will be there for him, but generally on teams that have 10-point implied team totals, I need them to be like 4K or less.
Fair enough. Anything? I assume you're not betting this.
I'm not betting this.
No. All right. Arizona State and Cal. Another game. We got a Pac-12 battle here. A team, again, we've seen some of these squads and we've seen a lot of struggles. Particularly, I want to start, of course, with Arizona State because I don't really understand. They've run out of quarterbacks multiple times here. Who is under center? What is the deal? This is a 13-point spread, by the way. not 17, but it's a double-digit spread. And who is starting for Arizona State, or do we not even know that?
It's Bourget out of necessity. They have injuries to both Pine and Rashada. And I honestly don't know if he's a downgrade. Rashada didn't show a lot, but I mean, he played like 2 games and he's a true freshman. I think there was a lot of upside for him as he grew, but unfortunately injury cut that short. Drew Pine got injured immediately. Bourget started some games last year and he was decent. I think he's enough to keep this game competitive. The spread indicates that. I bet the over in this game. 46.5 is really low. I think this is entirely based on the inefficiency of the signal callers. We have a pretty large unknown with Bourget here, but Cal is 16th in pace. Arizona State is 21st. These teams play at the speed of light. There's so many ways that this goes over 46.5. So I have no issues playing one-offs. If you want to do like skinny stacks of this game, that's where I'd look. Bourget's 4,800. You can play him with Caleb Williams. I have no problem with that. They actually have a pretty condensed receiving share. It's Elijah Badger and Xavier Gulleroy at receiver. Their 3 is Giovanni Sanders. He's not targeted a ton, so I wouldn't play him. But Badger and Gulleroy, their prices are fine. Jalen Conyers has an awesome role too. He was injured for the early part of the season, now fully healthy, 7 targets last week. They use him in the run game. He has 2 carries. He has a little Jaheim Bell to his game. He's going to be out there every single snap, and he's 4K. I'll play Conyers for sure. On the Cal side, expect both Ben Finley and Sam Jackson to play, so no reason to play a signal caller. Jaden Ott's 8,100. He's not going to be played just the way the slate shakes out, but he has an enormous role and big upside against Arizona State. Great contrarian play, flips your build a little bit. And then the receivers, Jeremiah Hunter and Tron Grizel are my 2 favorites here. Hunter at 5,900, he's averaging nearly 9 targets per game. He's certainly in play. Hasn't seen fewer than 8 targets in any game. Grizel should be playing more because Taj Davis is banged up. His routes have been on the rise. 4,800 is not a great price, but you're looking for a contrarian guy, it would be him. But ultimately, favorite guys in this game, Jeremiah Hunter, Jaden Ott. Oh, I didn't even mention Cam Skatibo, excuse me. When Arizona State keeps games close, he is an awesome workload. He had 20 carries last week and 4 targets. That was against USC. They've been blown out a couple times, so this is dependent on Arizona State hanging somewhat close. Otherwise, they'll just essentially go 4 wide and throw to receivers. But for GPPs, he's at least in the conversation.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you about Skatibo. Is he the type of guy where you think it's basically correlated to if they can keep this respectable and he gets phased out in some of this, or do you think his workload can get you there even if Cal State covers the spread?
His workload's good. I'm worried about opportunity cost. Just, man, there's so many good backs in this range, and we've only talked about a couple so far. But I think he's playable. I wouldn't X him out.
Is this the type of game where you have some, you mentioned that you like the over. Do you have some like game stacks of this game?
No game stacks, just like little skinny stacks.
Skinny stacks. Okay. Anything else from the spot?
I don't think so.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, Arizona State, that quarterback situation has just been,
I've
asked you this like 5 times. Are they just with Rashada, they're redshirting him?
Maybe. I don't know. They said they were considering it and then he got hurt. So I think now they probably don't even have to make like a tough decision. He's just hurt.
I mean, yeah, that's a tough scene. We had a couple questions from chat. Can you play Caleb Williams and Marshawn Lloyd in the same lineup?
I wouldn't. It uses like 2K of your salary.
Green QB and Hunter or Hennigan and Clare?
I prefer Hennigan.
Yeah, we'll get to the Memphis. Isaiah Williams or Hunter for cash?
Isaiah Williams or Hunter. So I would say Williams for cash.
And last one before we get to this next game. Any love still for McCulley or Clare under 4,200?
I think there's better plays, but those guys, I don't think you should X them out.
Let's keep it moving. Let's get to Kansas and Texas. Another interesting game, one that I think both of us think could be a respectable showing by the Jayhawks. It's a 16-point spread, but a healthy total. And we know that this team, or I believe, great coaching staff. I love their quarterback in Daniels. He's good to go. We've seen him play now. Kansas has got some things working. From a DFS perspective, when you look at this team, are we strictly focused on maybe Daniels and Grimm and Arnold on the outside? Or are we saying, okay, this might be a Devin Neal game? How do you structure some of the main playmakers for Kansas?
Kansas is kind of tough to get to, even with a pretty good game environment. I like Daniels for contrarian builds. He runs enough where I think he can get you there at 7,800. Neal, I'm worried about being game scripted out. He still is the pass catching back, but they just don't throw the ball to the running back as much as some other teams. So it's a worry for me. And then the receivers, they're hard to predict anyway. It's basically even between Lawrence Arnold, Skinner, and Luke Grimm. 19 targets, 18 targets, 17 targets. There's almost nothing separating them. So it's very tricky in my opinion. But if you force me to rank them, I would say Grimm is my favorite. I'm not playing a ton of Kansas, honestly.
And is that because you don't like the spot, or is it just opportunity cost and price? Like, looking again, I'll say it for a second time. Tools, the projections, your data sheets, that's all part of what we've got here at Stochastic. If you want that type of information, whether it's for betting or DFS, you can get it below. Get it for a week and try it out. It's a great deal. But when I look at that, some of these guys, this Kansas team has put up points. Now, the level of competition against Texas is a lot different than Nevada and Missouri State and even BYU. But is it just the opportunity cost where there are Jayhawks, there are just better plays in that range?
Yeah, for the most part. Neal at 6K. You've got Genty, not too expensive. Will Shipley's 100 less. The receivers, they're all more expensive than like Jatavian Sanders on the other side. So a lot of it is opportunity cost combined with them being 16-point underdogs. And then they're super slow, 119th in pace, playing a good Texas defense. So it's a culmination of all those things.
You mentioned the pace on the other side of this game. It is obviously a Longhorns team that can do some things. Do you worry that they are dragged down into some of that? Or do you think that Worthy and Mitchell and Ewers and all these weapons, you've mentioned Sanders as well. I know you like him over on Prize Picks. Are these guys playable?
I think so. And right away, I'm not as worried about volume. Efficiency should be here. Their team total 38, a little higher depending on the current spread you're looking at. Jonathan Brooks has a monstrous workload at 6,200, so you can do this sort of parallel Neal versus Brooks right away. They're almost the same price. Brooks 200 more. Brooks has the far superior game script, the far superior team total, the better workload. I mean, the guy he's averaging like 22 touches per game over the last two, and he's running a route on over 50% of the dropbacks. So it's easy just 1-for-1 to find the 200 for me to play Brooks. And I mean, you can play this game with Shipley too for 100 less. You mentioned opportunity costs a couple times. I would say that's the main factor here with Kansas players more than anything else on a slate that's pretty loose. So Brooks, he's an awesome play. I hope that was a good way to sum it up. Jatavian Sanders is way too underpriced. He leads the team in receiving yards. He's averaging 5.8 targets per game, route rate, almost every single dropback he's out there. And then you can use Worthy. He has slightly better target share, and I think he's going to be a little more explosive than Sanders game in, game out. He'll be a little more contrarian just because of price. A.D. Mitchell is going to be super contrarian today. I don't see anyone playing him at 5,200. He's kind of smack dab right in the middle between Sanders and Worthy. And then Whittington, he doesn't have the best route rate. They mix in a couple of these other guys, like Jonte Cook comes on the field a little bit. So he would be a guy I leave out. I would rather just play Sanders over him. Texas receivers, definitely going to be mixing and matching with a priority to Sanders. Quarterback Quinn Ewers, he's not taking as many sacks this year, so he doesn't quite have the same negative rushing floor he had last year, but he's still reliant on his air game. He doesn't run the ball really at all. Contrarian plays, sure, but he's not going to be among the top price-adjusted signal callers.
Yeah, he has been a little better. Hopefully, again, they got OU on deck. We'll see about that. Can we rank? So of these running backs, Shipley and Brooks and Genty, who else is in this question? Sanders, Watson. If you had to pick, say, two, where are your priorities in kind of that running back range?
All right, so I'm not going to factor in ownership and price-adjusted plays. Kind of. My number one would be Genty, 2 Watson, 3 Brooks, 4 Shipley, 5 Sanders. If you want to start talking about tournament leverage, Sanders by far provides the most of it.
There you have it. Anything else from this game?
I don't think so. I think we touched on everyone who's relevant.
Everybody needs a cheapie. Do you have someone under 4K?
No.
It's not that type of slate.
You can play Tyrone Broden if you want.
Dangerous.
All right,
game.
my guy's under 4K. Let me look.
Sometimes, listen, I think that's important to state, though. Some weeks there are just not, they're not the pay down options that we can find at the Stone Mint or anything.
All right, so I don't feel good about these guys, but I think they're in play. I would not be like tying your slate to them. I would mix and match some of these guys. Tyrone Broden for Arkansas. He's seeing an increased role. Man, even like Max Clare is 4,100. That's absurd. I think you can now go to Kyron Hudson for USC. Wouldn't feel great about it, but he's there. We're talking, man, this is a terrible range. Yeah, I'm going to say those two. I would not play Lake McCree.
There you go.
As you can see, I have almost none of that range.
And that's important to note because, again, sometimes it's just the nature of the slate.
It's insane. Like Theo Johnson's 4,200. But with that said, like running back is so affordable. The like Jatavian Sanders is so affordable. I think you could play multiple guys from that range and still find your way up to Caleb Williams pretty easily. That's what I've done. And you don't need to go down to sub 3.5K. If you're in that range, I would suggest playing Broden or Hudson. But everyone should have those guys. I mean, like with that build, there's really only two guys I see that are viable. I X'd out Lake McCree. Lake McCree might have like a 10% route share today.
I mean, yeah, it is very, very thin down there. And that's just, as you mentioned, maybe a mix and match options. Not sure we're going to find a ton here, but we'll go through it. Georgia and Auburn, interesting game. I want to see Georgia in a hostile environment like this, 44.5 point total. They're just north of 2 touchdowns. They've never been a great DFS team for various reasons. I assume that 8,900 Carson Beck is not the answer today, but you talk to me about what we've got for the Dogs.
He's been pretty efficient, but as you just mentioned, who's he played? South Carolina is the toughest opponent. Still a lot of questions with him. It's similar to, I don't know, Kyle McCord, but I think you can say he's shown a little more than a guy like Kyle McCord. So I wouldn't necessarily just go right out an X amount. And Georgia has been playing really hurt this year. I think at some point they're going to have an explosion game. The problem with this game environment, total's 44.5. So you have Georgia implied for 29.5. Generally speaking, their implied team total is around 40 in some of these games with blowout potential. So it's pretty hard for me to click Beck's name when you've got Caleb Williams just slightly above. You've got the cheap players that have better overall projections than him. Some of these guys that are cheap have better projections entirely, not just price adjusted. A couple guys I think are live for Georgia. DeJuan Edwards, this backfield's really banged up. We'll see what we get out of Kendall Milton and Roderick Robinson. Even if they're active, they've both been banged up. They could be in limited roles. Edwards had 20 carries against South Carolina. I think that game is really important to highlight here. If Auburn can keep this close, that's what coaxes the ceiling out of Georgia. That's where you get DeJuan Edwards with 20 carries. That was the game Brock Bowers had a 97% route participation and 9 targets. He's going to get opportunity regardless, but in this game environment, 14.5 point spread, Bowers is more likely to get closer to that 90% route share than like the 50% he's seen in some of these cupcake games. Bowers is another player, cash viable, extremely cheap, 5,400. For his role in this offense, he should be a strong consideration in lineups.
Anything else from this game? We had OG Gamer Mike, Auburn upset incoming. If that happens, I expect you in chat next week to come back so you can get your victory laps because those will be well-deserved. That would be a hell of a call. I don't see that happening, but I think it could be a competitive game. I didn't bet it, though.
Me either. I've considered betting Georgia, but honestly, this is going to come down to pregame. If enough of their players are back, then maybe I will pull the trigger. I think it's light, but I just don't know who else is going to be in or out for Georgia.
Anything else here?
I don't think so. I didn't play anyone on Auburn. 0.
Yeah. No, don't do that.
0 Auburn.
Indiana and Maryland. Kind of a different feel for various reasons. Tagovailoa, pretty good so far this year. I'm interested to see him in this spot. Where does he fall in the quarterback ranks today?
He's lower, but I think he has some upside. This game environment's not great. 50-point total. Indiana's really slow, 105th in pace, but the matchup should be fine. Tagovailoa has been in essentially 4 cupcakes. The one thing I'm worried about is Maryland's passing less than they ever had in the Tagovailoa years. Maybe some of this is game script, but 52% pass rate. Tagovailoa doesn't run. He needs a 300-yard bonus at his price. Now he's averaging 280 per game. Only 2 years ago, he averaged 295 per game for a full season. He can definitely get that. So for tournaments, don't hate it. Wouldn't be a major part of my portfolio. He's also a little difficult to stack. You have guys like Tyrese Chambers back from injury that muddles the rotation a little bit, but you still have Caden Prather, Jayshon Jones, and Ty Felton running the most routes. I would stack them in that order. And then for the backfield, Roman Hemby, this is a committee. Sometimes they run a little hot hand. Like there was a game where he had 19 carries, but other than that, 12, 9, 10, 7,200, just play the cheaper guys, Genty, Brooks, whoever it may be. On the Indiana side, Jalen Lucas is pretty interesting to me. I don't think Josh Henderson plays. The verbiage on him was pretty bad all week. So he had 13 carries, and he's their pass catcher. He had 12 targets 2 weeks ago. 4,600, I think you could sprinkle him. Not going to be a major part of my portfolio. Receiver, Donovan McCulley's 4,100. He runs a route in every drop back. Just worried about the efficiency with McCulley. I'd rather find the 600 for guys like Jatavian Sanders.
Couple questions from chat. Let's see. What do we have here? Any love for Parker Jenkins at running back? That's on FanDuel, the Houston back, I believe.
Yeah, I got a little bit of him.
Okay. Altmaier and Bowers or Card and Tesla?
Give me the Bowers side.
Yeah, I'd go the Bowers side as well. Bowers and Brooks or Isaiah Williams and Shipley and Cash?
Bowers, Brooks, Shipley, and Humst.
What'd you say?
Bowers, Brooks, Shipley, and Humst.
Isaiah Williams.
I prefer the Bowers side.
Favorite target if you're going to pair someone with Caleb Williams?
Williams.
It's so brutal.
That's price adjusted. I don't know.
It's tough.
Roll a dice. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, again, I refer to all the data and the projections, everything that you put together, and it shows right there. You are ultimately kind of rolling the dice with some of those USC guys. It's very, very difficult to decipher. Anything else from Maryland or IU, or can we move to the last 3 games?
Last 3 games.
All right, Michigan. In theory, but you got to say in theory multiple times for it to be true. Like in double theory, this could be a weird spot for them, but in reality, I'm sure they'll handle it because Nebraska just can't get out of their own way. I do want to ask you, though, what kind of game is this? Is this another game where someone like Roman Wilson is just going nuts? Is it, as always, Corum and Edwards, 1-2 combo? Is McCarthy in play? How does Michigan kind of rank in a game with a sub 40 total?
Yeah, they neuter their offense a ton in these games. They're 132nd in pace. There's only one team slower than them in the whole country. I mean, why not? What do you, yeah, it is Air Force, but what do you have to gain, I guess, by playing fast? They're not going to be anything less than 2 touchdown favorites until November. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, does it matter if he coaches? I don't think so. Total's 39. McCarthy, I don't think you can play at this price tag. He'll run in competitive games, but he has 7 designed attempts through 4. It's just not that kind of game. So he's out. He's averaging 228 through the air. Like he's not getting 300 yards. Corum kind of has iced Edwards a little bit, 21 carries to 6. I think he's probably the preferred play. He flips the build. He has enormous upside. Definitely my favorite guy if you're playing a Michigan player. Roman Wilson hasn't had great opportunity. His target share is good, but I mean, that's only amounted to 5.3 targets per game. He's going to have to catch a long ball, and he's super good. That could happen. And I think Cornelius Johnson's really good too. That could happen with him. Even Loveland. Loveland at 45 would probably be my favorite pass catcher. It comes down to price. All these guys are really volatile. But yeah, I have Corum, and that's it.
On the other side, is this in the Northwestern bucket of a team that is just playing a defense and they have no idea what's going on? Or is there somebody, whether it's Grant, or just, is there anyone from Nebraska that we could play?
I don't think so. Billy Kemp, maybe they feed him, but what is the upside with Billy Kemp today? I think it's pretty low.
Yeah, this is a game where it could be, even if Nebraska hangs, it could be pretty bad. That's putting it mildly. Yeah, I also didn't bet this. Again, you can always go to for our betting takes. We do 2 episodes now of betting you by popular demand because you guys are loving it and we're loving doing it. You can always go to OddsShopper and check all those out, including all the betting picks, what we got going on. But I didn't bet this game.
Nor did I.
Okay. No Edwards for you. Tim Riley's very upset.
Colorado Edwards?
I'm assuming he's talking about Edwards on Michigan, but maybe
Donovan Edwards. Sorry, the guy. I'm horrible with just one name for some reason.
There's I hear you.
This is a personal flaw. I apologize. I don't think the role's great for him. Like here's what he's done this year: 12 carries, 6 carries, 9 carries, 6 carries. He's their pass catching back. His route rate is awesome, but they're running like 20 routes a game. He has a 41% route share on like 20 routes a game.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I do.
He's awesome. He's such a good player. I wish he was in an offense. Yeah. I mean, Michigan's live to win the Big Ten, go to the national championship. I understand why he's there, but man, like the amount of money I would pay for him to play for I don't know, TCU, like a game where he had to play every single week. It would be awesome, but he's not there.
Confirmed not there. Also not in Illinois and Purdue, but they are on the slate. Another very competitive game. Pretty decent total. A lot of different areas to discuss here. And we'll start with the Illini side. Isaiah Williams, Pat Bryant, some of the pass catchers. Is Altmaier in play at 5,700 as a pay down quarterback? What do we see here?
Sneaky game. Pace is really fast. So I think a lot of the 30 or 53.5 total here comes down to inefficiency at quarterback on both sides. But Illinois 26th in pace, Purdue 35th. Both these defenses are horrible. Purdue has been they can't get a stop. And then if they have a turnover, they lose games. I have no issues with Altmaier here. He runs a lot, 146 rushing yards. He got benched in a game where he had 5 interceptions against Penn State. So his stats are a little depressed. Honestly, if you just extrapolated him for full games every game this year, he's probably around 240 pass yards per game and probably near 200 rushing yards. So he has a really good role, and I like that they run him a lot. He also scrambles all the time. His offensive line's not great. And Purdue's defense is horrific. You can stack him. Williams is way too cheap. He's averaging nearly 10 targets per game, averaging 83 yards. He's their locked-in wide receiver 1. He's going to be extremely chalky today. Navigate that carefully. Then the running backfield, just a two-way committee split right down the middle between Reggie Love, Josh McCray. McCray's enormous. He's like a 250-pound back, so one that's more likely to score touchdowns, probably McCray. They'll just throw him on the goal line, which makes me nervous with Reggie Love. Anyway, on the Purdue side, Illinois has played sort of a barbell schedule. They've got Penn State, and they had Toledo and some cupcakes. So their defense looks better on paper than I think it actually is. This team lost 4 NFL draft picks in their secondary. Hudson Card and Purdue run an air raid. I think Card's going to have success here through the air. I love his receivers, Deion Burks, Abdur-Rahman Yassin. Targets are really condensed between these two players. Last 2 weeks, Burks has 21 targets. Yassin has 23. All of the opportunities going to these two. Excellent pivots off Sanders and Bowers and Isaiah Williams even on the other side. The only thing I'll say about the backfield, they seem to have soured on Maccabee. They should. He's not very good. He's a former walk-on, so nothing against Maccabee. He was used out of necessity last year. Now they have Tyron Tracy and Dylan Downing to spell him, which has been more successful for this team. It's the pass game on both sides. I think stacks are live. And then last thing here, it's going to be an own game, not because either of these teams or these players are elite, but it's pricing. To get Caleb Williams, Altmaier, Card, and Taylon Green are going to be the most owned quarterbacks in those pairings. So just navigate this game with care.
Chris Albers, appreciate the super chat. He said, what's your favorite running back versus bad run defense today? Who are the defenses that suck we should target against, basically? Can
I segue this right into Boise State, Memphis?
Please. It's a perfect way to do it, actually. Go ahead.
All right, both these run defenses are horrible. Boise State, 5 yards per carry. Memphis, 4.9 yards per carry. Ashton Genty, if George Helani doesn't play, he's the single best play on the slate. And I got a lot of these questions throughout the week. What if Helani returns? 2 things. If Helani's 100%, which he's not, it's a 50-50 timeshare right down the middle. If Helani's limited, Genty's an absolute awesome play. And then does Kalani even get his rollback? Genty has been one of the best backs in the country. He's averaging over 100 yards per game. He has 21 targets. He hasn't seen fewer than 4 in any game. The matchup for him is incredibly easy. He should probably be like 9K at running back. He should be more expensive than Blake Corum, and he's not. And on the other side, Blake Watson, they've just fully thrown their chips in on him, even though they have some talented backups. Watson had 9 targets last week. He has 24 targets on the year. He's averaging 6 per game. And some of these games have been cupcakes. Like, what happens when Memphis is in competitive games? In the last 2, he has 15 targets, 17 carries last week. I mean, this guy has an awesome opportunity. Memphis is favored in the game. Neither of these backs are game script dependent. These are the best matchups for running backs, and it just happens to coincide with workload. So love these 2 backs here.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I've seen, sadly, enough Boise to confirm that this week. I actually like Memphis in that game. All right. I mean, we've got a couple of minutes left. It's perfect because we've got some questions. We can kind of rapid fire that. Sanders or Allen at running back? I assume he means Arkansas Sanders and Penn State Allen.
I think you're getting more for your buck with Sanders. Higher upside, cheaper price.
Any interest in Jalen Lucas for Indiana?
Yeah, I think he's a good value play.
Favorite cash quarterback other than Caleb Williams? Are you looking to pay down? Or is there another top end? Like, can you get 2 top end quarterbacks in cash?
You'd really have to sacrifice. I would go to Altmaier.
Yeah, that seems like the move. Slim, friend of the show. Altmaier or Shipley, last man in for a super flex.
Altmaier.
Yeah, I would agree. If Milton is limited, does Juwan get a massive workload?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
As long as Auburn keeps it competitive.
Yeah, and I think that they definitely have more than their fair chance to keep it competitive. I don't think they're going to win, but I wouldn't be stunned to see it competitive. Cameron said prefer. I can't pronounce this guy's name. The Arizona State guy. Play at Superflex. What?
Skatibo?
No, Borgett.
Borgett.
Yeah, Borgett. Maybe I can pronounce it. Prefer him to get off the other chalk QBs.
If the tournament's large enough, I mean, it sounds like it's a leverage question. So I'm assuming it's a pretty decent sized tournament. If leverage is the question, I don't hate it, but Borgett certainly projects worse.
Yeah, I think that's a very Boise State and Memphis possible shootout. Can you play both QBs? I wouldn't do that. I think it's more of a ground game personally.
If it's for leverage, I mean, it's a high total. I mean, that I agree with you. It would have to be a large tournament.
Quick thoughts. This is a good question to kind of round us out here on the South Carolina-Tennessee game. That's a good game. Tennessee's a pretty sizable favorite. I think it could come over that total, which is healthy. I assume that's a game on FanDuel that you're looking to target.
Yes. Oh, dang it. I accidentally deleted my exposures for that. I can tell you I'm playing a fair amount of Tennessee. I accidentally built the early slate after the main slate, and I deleted my guys. But yeah, I have plenty of Tennessee. Yeah,
I mean, that's just, again, they play, we talked about Michigan and Air Force in terms of tempo. If you go to the other side of those rankings, you will find Tennessee, who plays lightning fast. They're very content being in a pace up spot at all times for their opponents. So no problems with that. Schrader or go down to Altmaier or Card. I would go down personally to one of those two. Did we cover the Maryland game? We certainly did. It's not a great game, but we did mention it.
Well said.
Yeah, Squirrel White. Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I like him too. Love Squirrel White. Playing a fair amount of him. Just don't know how much because I deleted my exposures.
Evan Stewart, sneaky blow up spot.
Wouldn't be surprised. He's sick, man. He's good.
Super talented. Yeah, that is a guy that I hope he doesn't go too crazy because I bet Arkansas, but he's definitely a good player here. Syracuse Allen or Raheem Sanders?
Sanders.
Yeah, still Sanders. We're big on we're Raheem, man. I can't even say that.
Like, you just know going in, he could bury you. We don't know what his workload is, but if he's fully healthy, he's like right up there with Genty, man. Like, he is super sick.
Yeah, he's a player. No doubt about it. 12 up and 12 down. Not bad. If you have any questions that we didn't get to, Matt _Gajewski at JazzRaz DFS. And again, the best way for these slates, if there are games, over in Fin, I'm telling you, the link below, if you're playing any sort of volume, click CFB DFS weekly, get the package. It is worth it. All the work that goes in to what Matt puts together, all the usage and that data, it will pay for itself over and over. Absolutely. Even again, not just for DFS, you can use it for props, betting. I certainly use it to guide my bets. Really, really good information. I just want to make sure people are aware of that, but lock is upon us. I think we're going to bounce on out of here again. Stokastic, we're busy all day. There'll be NFL shows later in the day, I believe. And of course, tomorrow, you're going to be seeing everybody for hours on hours on hours, talking owner's box, talking NFL strategy, and hopefully making some more money. But once you hit today, make sure to tweet us. We love to see those celebration screenshots, and we want to celebrate together as a community here at Stokastic. But we're going to bounce it out of here from me, from Matt, and from Mike Lawrence behind the glass. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Week 5 in the books. Good luck. Enjoy the games. Talk to you next time.